Carol, can you do roll call? Are we doing roll call for all the boards or just?
I don't have all of their names, so I'm sorry. I was just going to do roll call for council.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Dick G.
Here.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Speak is absent. Councilmember Bob Spalding is absent. Mayor Chris Howley.
Here. Thank you. I know we all have busy lives and a lot going on now, and especially us. We have a bunch of meetings here, it seems like, this month. So we want to make this as quick as possible. My understanding, and I just kind of jump into it, I think at the last meeting we said that if we can get everybody on the same page, and this is the part that I want to make sure we got on record, that the council would consider or entertain helping the MACC by putting in some money to help sprinkle the back of the building. And that was just an idea, so it really hasn't been thrown around or discussed. And I do believe that the MACC board and the nonprofit group met this week. Can you fill us in
Thursday.
It's last week, sorry.
Could we, since we don't have a roll on everybody, we could get an introduction and affiliation around the table so we'll have it ready?
Why don't you start?
Before we do. I met the other people. Before we be on town manager.
Barb Storm, Director of the MACC. Becky Pope, MACC Board.
Ed Chapman, MACC Board.
Angie Landrum, Nonprofit.
Cheryl Graham, nonprofit.
Brian Baker, nonprofit.
And Brooke will be joining us probably 30 minutes.
Excellent.
And Angie's on the MACC Board too.
Oh, okay.
And Angie's on the MACC Board.
Okay. All right. Good. If we could get, I think if we cut to the chase and find out how your meeting went between the board and the nonprofit group, I think that would, is that where we want to go?
Yeah. It was a good meeting. It was I would say, a successful meeting. Really, I think you guys should speak to changes that you made from your original ideas. So what do you say?
It's your turn. I did it last time. Yep.
Well,
Pull the microphone.
Can you hear me?
So there you go.
We decided to refocus our efforts to just fundraising for the building. So that's what we're doing now.
You changed your name too, correct?
We changed our name to SME Preservation Fund.
Signal Mountain Elementary.
And I'm not adverse to what was talked about previously, and I think part of the conversation was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we go this direction for a year or two with a memorandum of understanding of where we have in there, and then revisit this after a 2-year period and make sure everybody's comfortable with the process. Because I think everyone sitting in this room, including myself, wants to see this succeed, and I think this, to me, sounds like a good path forward. Dick?
Yeah, I think there's some caveats, we just need to cover that. And but I'm a willing participant. I'm not the Grinch in this thing at all. I want to make it, see how to make it work. But I spent too much time on what some of the pitfalls are, so I just want to get them out and make sure that we cover them. Sprinkling from where we currently stop to include the remainder of the building is not an automatic path to the fire marshal approval for the use of that building. We still have to go through that process, if I understand it. So that's just to make you aware that just because we agree to do that does not make it a slam dunk that we're going to be given permission to go in there and use the building as it is. And so what we've got to do then is get with the fire marshal and find out what the requirements are in order to meet their approval. And if you have any idea from past experience with the fire marshal over the past 2 years, you know that can be a difficult process, but we need to begin.
And the complication there is there's a brand new fire marshal who's been a little more
a little more rigorous in his inspection standards than in the past. So,
Board, are you aware of anything that would, other than sprinkling?
We expect that that would facilitate use of the building, but it would have to be submitted to the state. for
No,
review.
of course, right. But we're not aware of anything, there's nothing that I mean, if there is, let's put that on the table.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would like to think we could use it without any, but until the fire marshal comes in and makes the inspection, and if I'm going from the comments I heard Eric make, but when he went through the building for the first time,
With the new guy?
with the new person, I mean, he
We
was...
met with Eric and Boyd and all this. And our understanding was once the sprinkler system is in, then there shouldn't be a problem with use of the building. All the ADA and stuff like that was not things that would cause the building to be closed. It was the sprinkler system that was causing the building to be closed.
I'd like confirmation of that, because I believe it's more complicated than that. But if I'm wrong, that's fine, but I think
So
we
you're
need
saying
to clear
before we discuss a lot of money
Yeah.
for that or not?
Well, one of the things we have to, as we discussed, be careful about, we now finally have an approved plan from the state. And shifting gears any at all, and that's what happened to us before. We had to back up and start all over through the process. So we need to move forward with the project at hand, get that sprinkler in. We met the other day with the sprinkler contractor. They basically said they're going to keep our existing contract in place. They're not going to require us to change that. And basically we'll do a deduct change to that for the work they're not doing. Then we can simply add that back on after the work is completed. But we need to complete the project that we have before we send anything else into the state.
Because what we don't want to do is start over and then wait for their approval. So if we start going, then...
Right.
But
That doesn't mean we
approval,
can't work towards that.
but an approval will be necessary.
Correct.
Yeah, and so I guess that's what I'm saying. We just don't get an automatic pass because we were sprinkling.
Are you amenable to allotting the funds? And my understanding is nonprofit had some that they could contribute to the back of the sprinkler piece. Are you comfortable with allotting it pending that?
Yeah.
That way they get a commitment, everybody gets a commitment for us that we're supporting this and we want to see it move forward.
I guess technically we ought to ask how much, what the bill will be.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have that by the end of the week.
Okay.
That's what they...
Has it changed?
Well, no. But how that's divided isn't as simple as a square footage scenario, because the riser room still has to go in. The smoke and heat detector in the old part of the building still have to go in. The sprinkler system doesn't have to go in. So they're in the process of dividing all that and see what the deduct change order would be, and that in effect will give us the cost to complete the work subsequent to this project finishing.
I don't know enough about sprinklers, so this may be a really dumb comment, but by doing just the front part, I know it's not as simple as just turning on the back part, but they're not redesigning a system where they just feed the front part, so it'll change, they have to get additional feed to do the back part.
No.
Okay.
It'll come in from the riser room, and you'll basically have a leg that will feed the back part.
Okay.
They will run that and cap it.
Okay. But it's not going to be a pressure issue, it's not
No.
that we're aware of?
No, there's enough water there to
Well,
run.
We have a very large
Yes.
base
To me, this is a timing issue, and I think we've waited too long to get the theater and get that part. And I realize that down the road, that's probably going to cost us more because us having to wait and potentially come up with some more to fix the front. But I've got a huge concern with resubmitting before we start. I'd rather just start.
In order of magnitude, 50,000, 100,000, 25,000.
The whole thing was 130, wasn't it? 133, I think.
It's around there.
So you're
Carol,
hoping to have
I don't have it.
you're hoping to have the number at
By
the
the
end of the
this
week?
week, right.
Okay, that's great.
And I think if at this point, if we're talking about a partnership and funding, I think that ballpark is probably close to 50, 60,000. If we establish what that partnership looks like.
Yeah, and again, this timing issue is, we've got an all-day budget on Friday, so I'd really like to be able to get it in, I'd really like to get it in. Go ahead.
Let me, and then I won't pick up on that. I just, again, wet blanket, I can't help it. We only did a partial approval, we council,
Right.
because of the limitation of funds to do a complete renovation of that building. I mean, that was, so now we are now reconsidering that decision and are going forward with a renovation modified to a certain extent. We're obviously not going down the same path as that was described in the P&A, which for those acronyms, that was what was provided by the architect and the engineer. So we're doing a partial, because that was a $3 million or $2 million project, depending on how you sliced it. So I think that anything we approve going forward has got to have a caveat that the costs, I mean, if we couldn't approve it before, then I think we need to be willing to pull the plug if that's what we have to do based on the cost of meeting whatever requirements are imposed on us by the fire marshal or any other authority saying it's safe to use.
Right. And beyond what the fire marshal may or may not require, again, I think we get the sprinkler system in. I don't see any other major hindrance to using that part of the building. Yeah, that doesn't do anything to address all of the other issues that the P&A addressed, and it needs to be clear that we're not committing to that.
I agree, but
This is going to be an incremental.
Realize that we're not signing a blank check here until we get a clear path.
My vision for that is basically to get to the point where the nonprofit and the other folks are able to use that back of the building to do the improvements they want to do, and this and that, and we're showing the good faith of getting them that far.
And my comments are not meant to be an objection to that. My comments are just making sure we dot I's and cross T's.
You look very concerned.
Well, it's a couple things. I'm a bit confused as to why we're talking about the sprinkler right now, because that's not really even what's on here tonight. But that's secondary. I want to go back to something you said. Why you said we need to complete the first phase before we submit again. Is that absolutely, I mean, can you convince me that's necessary? Couldn't we, once it's underway, begin the process of submitting to say we want to sprinkle the rest of the building since they've already approved that at one point?
When we met with the architects and engineers and the sprinkler people, sprinkler folks didn't really weigh in on it, but they stressed again the potential hazard of muddying the water on this project. If we submit and want to change something, we could end up in the same boat where they. Because
do you think
we had a plan approved, and we asked to modify that plan, and they made us start all over again.
But you wouldn't be asking to modify, you'd be doing like a phase 2.
We run the, I think what I'm saying is we run the risk of them pulling the plug in the middle of our renovations, but I agree with Dan on this. Once we get started and get going on that, which my understanding is we're very close, right? We've got all the approvals and everything, so we can get going on it soon. That's when you go back and say, oh, hey, we want to do this too.
It's easy for us to say.
I know,
The people
I understand.
who have been closest to it, involved in the process, are the ones that I would.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
And he's
that's.
But yeah.
I think to have to giving you. I don't think anybody in this room knows what would happen if we submit that paperwork.
I think
My job is to tell you what my opinion is and what I think would be the wise course of action.
Right, I mean, if I was concerned, that's, I mean, because you just said it, and that was kind of different from, but I didn't know that. I mean, I want the most current information.
I think is the happy medium to that is put it into staff's very capable hands of, hey, let's get this thing started and worked on, and when we feel comfortable to go back and say, hey, we want to sprinkle the whole building, and let them submit then. Because I don't think the fire marshal will shut us down in the back, so we'll continue to have use on it if that's our intention, I believe. I mean, I can't promise.
Well, that's not what Eric had said.
The current plan and how we got it approved ultimately was that once this project is completed, the back part of the building is unoccupied.
That's right.
We couldn't even list it as storage.
I know, but
So-
you said once it's completed, right?
Once it's completed, we're going to move out of the back into the front. And as soon as possible,
As long as this project's going on, we're still allowed to use the back?
yes, we can use the back temporarily while we finish the project in the front. Then we move from the back to the front, and at that point, we can look to the sprinkler project. If everything's ready to submit, shop drawings and everything, that shouldn't take very long. And the sprinkler contractor has told us basically, we'll honor the contract and do it for pretty much the same price, which was huge. Now, there may be a little mobilization or something, but we're really good shape there. It's just...
So when we start the 10-year renovation on the front, we'll be fine for 10 years in the back? I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that.
Thanks for clarity.
The back of the building is really not, I mean, it looked like crap when we first started working on it, but that's why we've been working on it so hard, as fast as we can, because we need to stabilize it before we can get back in there and work on it for a bit while that's being done. It looked worse than it actually was, and after we delved into it and pulled things down, scraped off paint, took down some drop ceilings and all this, not bad. Not bad.
Do you, may I?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Garvey,
I'm sorry.
can I put you on the spot? No, that's all right. You didn't come in here to participate. Can I put you on the spot?
Why don't you come up here if you don't mind, sir?
This is Ed Garvey, the architect that's on the project. And the question revolves around why we don't submit the phase 2, for lack of a better term, project before we complete the project that is now approved. And I think I've explained the concern and the danger of muddying the waters with this project.
Given the history of the previous project and it being approved and almost starting and then stopping, I don't really want to push the fire marshal's office and confusing them saying, oh, we're adding another phase. I'd like to get this project done because they really, I'm not sure you have the right term, but I think they would really like to see that.
And
I had to cancel the previous job. I had to cancel the previous project because they actually thought it was still ongoing and wondered why construction never happened. And so it would just be nice and clean to get this one done. And then maybe if we're nearing completion and you want to go forward with a second phase, maybe we can then start looking into whatever it needs to be done.
Optimize the timing, but not jeopardize the current project.
Right.
That's kind of the approach I was, but Ed's the one that's dealt with them directly. And again, I appreciate you clarifying that, because my memory was that we literally had to cancel one project and start all over.
Right.
And we're really trying to avoid that, anything close to that scenario again.
When can we start?
Bids are due the 30th.
So when can we start?
Tuesday.
I mean, legitimately, what's...
Well, I think were you not
We
going
asked
to have it?
we asked for completion by the end of August.
Well, you were going to have it to the council for approval, I think you said on the 14th of May. And, you know, the contractors have been told that as soon as that decision is made, we'll award it to well, I don't know if you'll choose a contractor or not before then, but as soon as the council votes to approve the project, we can notify the contractors, and then I'm thinking within 10 days they can be on the site.
Conservatively, June 1?
Could be the 24th of May.
Yeah, I think usually June.
How many hours do you have sprinkler in this, and then the construction, or they're just basically two?
The sprinkler contractor is set. We have actually two projects, and this is nothing we've tried to be very careful about. Repairing the floors in the auditorium and some of the other stuff isn't in the state-approved plan. That's separate and apart. Those are repairs, so that don't have to be approved. But we're trying to coordinate and do them both at the same time because of the wall in the auditorium and the back alleyway all tied together and all that. It needs to be done at once. So we technically are bidding it out separately, but we've put it in the hands of the same people and asked them to bid it so we can optimize the chance of getting one contractor to do all of that. Okay. So even at that, we're trying to be very careful not to cross up with the fire marshal.
So the 14th is our town meeting, and we believe we'll be set to finalize a vote on that.
Plan to have a resolution to award a contract.
How much, it's been a while, how much over the 300,000 I think it's going to be?
I have no idea. I don't know that we.
As far
part
as
of that 300 is the
how much money does the town have to spend on the project?
Well, we appropriated $300,000 two years ago.
A year ago?
Well, that was the number that I had in my mind. I had heard that said. But when the contractors inquired, I told them I didn't know. I couldn't tell them. I didn't want that to affect the bid.
Yeah, they didn't give you any indications of what it might, okay.
Are we comfortable with that path forward then?
Yeah, like I said, I think, yes, we do, but we've got to make sure that we've got ourselves covered.
I would like either at our budget meeting, or I guess I preferred at the May meeting, that we show some sort of commitment by, even if it's caveat filled, by appropriating that money, which allows us, this is a time issue because Friday we got our budgets and we need to figure it in for next year if that's what's going to happen.
My only concern is approving something.
Understand.
Without making sure we have full approval.
Understand.
But I'm there. I'm not saying stop.
Yeah.
You have some other issues.
Yeah.
It's not that issues. Didn't we already approve it? For 300,000?
300, we didn't approve.
We haven't approved
The back, sprinkling of the back.
Right.
And basically, we don't know what the cost of sprinkling is, so.
Well, now, I was doing it under I supported and get behind it because I'm doing it on the premise that the nonprofit had come up with some funds that will help us on that.
Right, but looking at the reason I brought my budget book, having read through it and seeing where we are, I don't want us to mislead anyone as to what we're about to go through starting Friday. There's no money in here for that. I mean, unless I'm anxious to see what happens Friday.
I think we can find the money.
That's right. That's why I say I'm not going.
That's why we need the answer by Friday. So
right.
We have to.
But see, and which is why I was questioning discussing the sprinkler system at this point until we had the budget meeting. That's why I brought that up, in case anybody's wondering, because.
But yeah,
there is a commitment on the town's part.
Yeah.
I want to see it sprinkled. I mean, but
my point
we have to pay for it.
If that's our intention, I want to make sure that we deal with it on Friday. That's why it was important to me to have this meeting, because I think we can figure that out if we know what direction we're going.
Okay.
There is $27,000 currently in the MACC Foundation account. You all have raised $6,000 thereabouts, I understand.
If everybody in this room tonight will buy a ticket for the concert on Sunday, we'd be doing even better.
part of that 300 went to the front of the sprinkler.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
If I remember the number right, the sprinkler number of that $300,000 was 28, right? So there's,
I keep hearing that it's going to be 70,000 to
Yeah,
spend in the back.
I think
That's
what
the
Boyd
number
told
I've
us at one
always
meeting, it was around 70 for the, we'd spent about 70 for the front.
so we're roughly half the way there,
Right.
combining private and
Right.
potential public funds.
Right.
So we're talking about 30-ish thousand dollars, we have to find $30,000.
That's kind of why I wanted to
Yeah.
get there, so we knew what we had to deal with Friday to get to where we all want to be, hopefully.
Okay, so that makes it.
I would
I'm okay.
make a motion then. Or, do you have any other issues before we make a motion? Does anybody else want to add anything?
Can I ask what the motion?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what do we,
Well, I was going to say, that we like what's happened. Let's see, how do we do this? I'm about to repeat this about 4 times. We like what's happened here, and we are looking to,
I'm gonna save you.
thank you.
What I would like the 501c3 to do is make a proposal that we enter into a public-private agreement to share the cost of extending the sprinkler system throughout the building. And you believe that cost will be approximately $70,000.
Does that jeopardize us in the planning? By making?
With state?
Yeah. Okay.
So moved.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly, I was trying to do it without,
Well,
You're
if
clarifying.
we get a motion, we can work against the motion. So we've got a second, and you all are the board, so you have voted. 3 is unanimous.
Everybody nod your head.
So-
we're all in agreement, right?
And we've discussed the process. This change, and we kind of bounced off of it, but the change of direction really does kind of simplify how we approach these things. It's not, there's no longer a conflict or issue between whose role is what between MACC board and MACC nonprofit. Now we have MACC board and we have SME Preservation Fund. They enter into agreements with the town, and we have the model set for that with the library.
Right.
And approaching it this way, generally, and we still can, have a basic agreement about do's and don'ts of fundraising. And then we have project-specific agreements that outline, here's the project, town's on board with it, if you raise the funds, we'll do the project, they donate the money to the town. We've discussed all that, and we're good to go.
So we have a proposal. So I'm going to make a motion then that we enter into an agreement in principle with the Signal Mountain SME
SME
Preservation Group to fund the extension of the sprinkler system throughout the MACC.
Under the caveat.
Yeah, the estimated cost is that would be roughly approximately $70,000.
She needs a raise.
Carol, you with me?
No, I lost you. To fund extension of sprinkler system
Yeah,
to,
at an estimated cost of $70,000.
okay, let's
Yeah.
back up. I'm sorry, can we back up for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have enter into an agreement in principle with the Signal Mountain Education
Signal Mountain Elementary.
Preservation Fund to fund extension of sprinkler system to
Throughout MACC.
with an estimated cost of $70,000.
Yes. And in principle, it means that we have other issues that have to be resolved. But I think that's sufficient at this point.
And
It doesn't fully commit us, because we got to wait to see.
Right.
Whatever.
And even the agreement, fully agreed upon and executed, will have a clause that says all commitments of the town are subject to budgetary constraints and availability of
All
funds.
that stuff. But at least we are Hello, Brooke. How are you? At least we're on the way.
Yes.
And I think that's a good step forward.
Let the record reflect that Brooke's here.
Okay.
But what I don't want to do, this is something that needs to come at our May 14th meeting, which we'll write up and have it
In detail.
right?
Yeah, this is just
to work on that. Okay. I second that motion. Whatever it was.
It's a good one.
Further discussion on that?
You guys were having a discussion.
I was going to wait for the vote, and then I'll say what I was going to say.
Is it going to make us change our vote?
Nope.
All right. With hearing no further discussion,
Well,
okay.
Who's in this 70 that we're talking about? Some of that has to do with the money that prior nonprofits have.
No.
That's what I wanted to get on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, the owners of that money are sitting right there.
Yeah.
It's
It's their
Okay,
27,000.
what I was going to say, I was going to wait for the vote, but until there is a commitment by the town that this is where the funds are going to be possible to go, if the money is there. The $27,000 that the MACC board has raised over the last 7 years is in the Community Foundation Fund. Those funds are governed by a 3-member advisory committee. So what the MACC board, our usual procedure is for the MACC board to vote to spend, to request of the advisory committee to spend those funds for a certain project. That has to go to the advisory committee and they have to vote on it. There's
So
3 of them, so
That's one of the caveats.
yes.
Well, yes, but
I have no doubt
Can I
that that money
clarify though,
will
when
be.
you say the MACC board's been raising
Yeah.
over this time?
Yes.
There was money set aside from the previous nonprofit group?
That's in the
now
town.
That's-
That's in the
Okay,
town's
so
budget.
that's in addition to the 27 that's in the
Well,
community.
that's not in addition.
That's part of the,
That's all.
that's in the, we're
That's in
using
the
that to sprinkle the
300,000.
front part of the building.
Right.
Yes.
So that's already accounted for and going towards the sprinkler.
Then we still have this 27 and
Yes.
whatever's coming in here.
Right.
Okay, I just want, so everybody understands, because
Yeah,
there
right.
was a previous group that specifically put it in for the sprinklers.
And it is being spent for the sprinklers.
if the 70,000 is a real number, it looks like about a 50-50 deal.
Right.
And that's.
I think that's great.
That's the start, yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for that.
I'm glad we finally got to a place where we could do that. So thank you all. Thank for everybody's efforts. I mean, there's been a lot of work over there and a lot of people working on this, and everybody ultimately, I believe, has the same goal. So appreciate it. Any other discussions? While we're in a public meeting, I just want to ask, on Friday, will we have an agenda to address some like board applications and some of the other things? Because can we make that at 12:30 when we would normally have our meeting? Because Amy will be there for sure, but anybody that doesn't know we're having an all-day budget meeting, as we come back from lunch, we will handle that, because that's the time they would normally come for our Friday meeting anyways. That way we'll have the people here. Is that okay?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Okay. Or do you have it scheduled a little differently?
yeah, that's not an issue. I was just
Okay.
thinking what was hitting about that time, we can adjust it.
You're smirking.
Because it's me at 12:30.
That's why I said, yeah, we can adjust it.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
She and I are there all day, so.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
As long as you're spending money.
To clarify, we haven't spent anything.
As long as we are discussing the town spending some money. The 2 classrooms at the end of Wilhite Hall, which were in the worst shape, numbers 9 and 10, where we have been concentrating so much work so that when the front half of all those classrooms have to move to the back, they'll actually have a place to go, which would be good. The air conditioners in both of those rooms, I don't even like breathing when I walk. And we don't even turn them on, they're unplugged, but I don't even like breathing when I walk next to them. They are horrible.
Is it a filter issue?
Oh, it's much more than that.
No, it's.
Oh, is it?
The inside of those air conditioners is about the same color as Boyd's jacket. We don't want to breathe what may be coming out of that, yeah. It's okay on your jacket, it's not okay in an air conditioner. So Barb had discussed, I had mentioned that she was going to, or thinking of, ordering 2 new air conditioners for those rooms. Our long-term goal for the entire building is to put in split systems per room to handle the heat and the air. I haven't priced good-sized window air conditioners, but those are not going to be inexpensive.
How much are these?
I don't know, Eric was going to be looking into that for when
Just,
we're using
But
those.
these are
$50, $1,000,
Oh, no, 800,
5,000?
1,000.
800 to 1,000, let's say for that, so it'd be 2 of those. There are 2 air conditioners still in great shape in the front left wing in rooms 1 and 1 and 2, or, yeah, down the hall from your office there.
One is not in real good shape, but
Does
it's,
it work?
yes, and it's been remediated, it's been cleaned, it's just that it's just as old as the back ones.
But it's not,
But it's better than-
it's better than the ones in the back. But my point is, if we're going to be hopefully switching to split systems, rather than spend that much money on 2 there, why not bump up a little more, put in 2 split systems in those 2 rooms and move their current air conditioners back to the back? Instead of buying 2 air conditioners that hopefully within a year we'll be replacing, but that just seems to be a waste of money.
Is that in the budget we're looking at? No.
That's why I brought it up.
Okay,
Just food for thought on that one.
Staff to.
yeah,
Yeah. Certainly don't need a decision tonight, but just keep that in the back of your mind.
all right.
When you're thinking about how you're going to be,
I know.
doing all that, yeah.
Anything else? Thank you all very much. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.